Hamburg saw major takeaways like a 10-point action agenda on fighting terrorism presented by Prime Minister Narendra Modi that called for deterrent action against countries supporting terrorism, a ban on entry of officials from such countries into the G20 member nations, and for concrete cooperation on cyber security. Prime Minister also spoke against protectionism and for free trade and called for taking forward the fight against black money and corruption.
When leaders of the G20 countries representing two-thirds of the world's population met in Germany's Hamburg, they had many important issues like terrorism, sustainable development, climate change and energy on their agenda. Prior to the meeting, host German Chancellor Angela Merkel welcomed the leaders. PM Modi also received a warm welcome from Merkel, after which the participants posed for a commemorative photo. In the first session of the conference, the Prime Minister described terrorism as one of the most serious challenges of the present day and praised the German Chancellor for selecting this topic. Prime Minister Modi welcomed the action plan against terror in the summit and presented a 10-point action agenda for it. Deterrent action against nations supporting terrorism must be made compulsory. Such nations should be barred from the G20. G20 nations must exchange lists of suspected terrorists and their supporters. Legal processes such as extradition should be simplified and expedited. Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism should be adopted soon. UN Security Council resolutions and other international processes should be effectively implemented. G20 nations should give emphasis to de-radicalization programs and exchange best practices. Terror financing should be curtailed by means of Financial Action Task Force and other means. Weapons and Explosive Action Task Force should be constituted on the lines of FATF so that source of weapons to the terrorists is stopped. G20 nations should cooperate in cybersecurity with a focus on terrorist activities. National security advisors on counter-terrorism mechanisms should be constituted. Clearly, the Prime Minister was referring to Pakistan without naming it and making it clear that some countries use terrorists to fulfill their political purpose. The PM stressed on this point.
आतंकवाद का मुद्दा है जिस पर अब तक तय नहीं हो पाया है कि आतंकवाद है क्या। यूएन का कन्वेंशन अभी तक भारत ने प्रपोज किया था, अभी तक साइन नहीं हो पाया है, उस पर सहमति नहीं बन पाई है.
Earlier, the German Chancellor laid out the conference's agenda, saying that huge targets can only be achieved when governments are ready to come forward and work together. We have tried to set the agenda, obviously on economy and trade, but also on issues like climate change and energy policies. Germany has set the focus on Africa because we Europeans, and I am speaking from the European perspective, see Africa as our neighboring continent. We have to do everything to bring it forward. The main agenda of the two-day conference is theme-shaping an interconnected world. At the summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also participate in special sessions organized for global development, trade, sustainable development, climate change and energy. The highlight, however, was that US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin joined hands for the first time on Friday. The meeting is being described as one of the most discussed political meetings of the year. Before this, both leaders had said that they are hopeful of finally sitting to talk. Russia's alleged intervention into the US presidential elections and a number of other issues had led to tensions between the two countries. The first session being complete, the next will see discussions on the rest of the agenda. At present, the summit is to witness brainstorming sessions among 20 biggest countries of the world on all international challenges, with the hope that something concrete will emerge at its conclusion. With inputs from Sudhakar Das and Siddhant Sibbal in Hamburg, News Night Desk, DD News.
At the BRICS leaders meeting too, the focus was predominantly on fighting terrorism. PM Modi appealed to BRICS member states to take joint action against terrorism and interestingly won accolades from Chinese President Xi Jinping, who lauded India's strong resolve against terrorism. Prime Minister also said that India is committed to the Paris Climate Accord in letter and spirit and called for quick action to establish a BRICS rating agency.
Terrorist franchise, terrorist financing, सेफ हेवन तथा उनके स्पॉन्सर्स के विरुद्ध G20 देशों को एकजुट होकर सुदृढ़ तथा सशक्त कार्रवाई करनी होगी.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi calling leaders from BRICS nations to fight terrorism collectively, urging G20 nations to collectively crack down on terror financing, safe havens, support and sponsors of terrorism, and this was widely appreciated by Chinese President Xi Jinping. PM Modi also appreciated the momentum in the BRICS bloc under the Chinese chairmanship and extended full cooperation for the grouping's upcoming summit to be hosted in Beijing.
राष्ट्रपति शी की अध्यक्षता में ब्रिक्स की गतिशीलता तथा पॉजिटिव मोमेंटम ने हमारे आपसी सहयोग को और भी गहरा किया है. मैं राष्ट्रपति श्री जिनपिंग को आने वाली 9वीं ब्रिक्स समिट के लिए बहुत-बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं तथा भारत की तरफ से उनको मैं पूर्ण समर्थन देता हूं.
At the informal meet on the sidelines of the G20 summit, PM Modi called for sustained global economic recovery, referring to reforms carried out by his government, including implementation of the goods and services tax.
भारत का रिफॉर्म एजेंडा लगातार आगे बढ़ रहा है. पिछले सप्ताह लागू हुआ गुड्स एंड सर्विस टैक्स भारत के पिछले 70 साल के इतिहास का सबसे बड़ा टैक्स रिफॉर्म है. इससे बिजनेसेस को मदद मिलेगी, जीडीपी का विस्तार होगा तथा 1.3 बिलियन लोगों की एक यूनिफाइड मार्केट बनेगी.
And once again there was praise from Xi Jinping. PM even advocated a collective voice against the practice of protectionism, especially in the spheres of trade and movement of knowledge and professionals. On climate change, PM Modi said that it was mandatory to implement the consensus of the Paris Agreement on climate change weeks after the US decided to pull out of the landmark deal. He asserted that India will implement the accord in letter and spirit. PM Modi also pitched for expediting BRICS rating agency, while emphasizing that international financial institutions should reflect the world's current economic balance.
हमें इंश्योर करना होगा कि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय वित्तीय संस्थाएं विश्व के मौजूदा आर्थिक बैलेंस को पूरी तरह से रिफ्लेक्ट करें. ब्रिक्स रेटिंग एजेंसी की शीघ्र स्थापना हमारा साझा लक्ष्य होना चाहिए.
BRICS bloc comprises 5 members: Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. With inputs from Siddhant Sibal and Sudhakar Das in Hamburg, Newsnight Desk, DD News.
And now correspondents